Okay, we are live. We are again hosting this from India, and we have a great guest today. It is July 2nd, and the world is going all kinds of aggressive things happening, wars and innovation and rockets and cars. And I'm telling you, India is just bursting with innovation and growth. And it has been a fascinating 2 weeks for me here. But before we get going, let's have our own John Sibley Butler give us some music.
In the Southland, there's a city way down on the river where the women are very pretty and all the men deliver. We got music going all the time. Starts in the daytime and go all through the night. And when you hear that music playing, gonna tell you, baby's gonna be all right. So come on, baby, come on down. Bring your paintbrush, we're painting the town. You wanna do some living before you're done. Do it down in New Orleans.
So I just tried something. Thank you, Johnny. I just tried something, Johnny, that I didn't know. But you only find these things out when you travel. So if you type ERCOT from outside the US, you get blocked.
Wow.
Yeah. So the utilities and the grid operators are blocking foreign access and foreign view of their data and their websites and all their stuff.
So, Andres, why is that happening?
Well, that's cybersecurity. We're trying to prevent from foreign actors to meddle with our country.
Well, let's talk about that some. Let's talk about where we are and the changes in the business models and where we are. And Jason, it's always good to have a great officer night on Digital Roundtable. But as we know that all cities, everything started with wealth and business creation. I was just going back and looking at the great cities of Cleveland, Ohio, when they had millionaires row, looking at even New York City when they had millionaires row, and looked at how great cities have deteriorated, mainly because of the development of business models and also
Mhm.
the movement of the workforce and the technology out of the country. As you know, it was our economists who said that we're going to make China the key producers of what we do, and we would send the raw materials. And in doing so, and Llewellyn knows that I teach my students, you seek the cheapest labor and the growing market with the different kinds of technologies. But we're at a different stage now because when we look at cybersecurity, it is unmovable. The technology that's created it is unmovable. So consequently, we have come to two interesting kinds of situations in America. Now, I'll say that
Mhm.
World War, when the Japanese World War II happened and the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, we went from 2 aircraft carriers to 22 in 6 months. We went from 2 jet planes to 5,000 in 6 months. All of the manufacturing turned toward the war effort. That would not happen today. If we had a conflict with China, which we don't want to do, or
Mhm.
anybody else in the world, we could not turn around and produce our own kind of technologies and our own weapon systems because we don't even make our own bullets in the context of America.
Uh-huh.
What we do with the rest of the world is to flow of capital through the cyber network. That's number one. What has happened in America is that the new manufacturing is the stock market. And I've said before, if Andreas is on the stock market, he's fine. Because when Andreas invests in the stock market and he gets his dividends, he does not have to pay for a great company in America or contribute to a great company in America. And the reality is America is now a colony in the classical sense of China. We send raw materials there and they produce everything and we buy it back from them. But the cybersecurity is what makes everything in the world move. And as we move to the application of the fast idiot, which I refer to as AI, with a semi-brain, where things can happen in a click of the finger, where the entire world has changed. But I would still say this. I'll say this as an old ground pounder, that you still need boots on the ground if we ever get into conflict. But the reality is this. The war will be fought with drones. The war will be fought with instruments where people are not involved, but that will not secure the freedoms of people. The drones and the electronic weapons that we have will not free the security of people. It would only be what has happened traditionally. So our biggest problem now, Andreas, as you travel the world, is where the new technologies keep coming out of America. Will our PhD students continue to come to America? All of the great companies start in science and technology, whether it's biological and drugs, whether it's computer science and IBM, whether it's Dell Computers and storage, where the guy who did all of the storage, John Goodenough, won the Nobel Prize, whether it's Kellogg's cornflakes, whether it's in my father's industry, how did all of the farmers in America feed the world? So as we talk about cybersecurity, Llewellyn, I'm going to take you back to the physiocrats, and I'm going to tell you that Adam Smith had it wrong. Adam Smith believed that you start with labor in the analysis of, or the mathematics of the economy. The physiocrats in the 1500s from France believed that you started with the bounty of the earth. So my father, who had degrees in agriculture, said everything economically starts with the bounty of the earth. Whether it's different kind of materials that you deal with, whether it's rare earth that you deal with, it does not start with labor. So maybe we have to change our analysis of economics, of what I call the mathematics of economics. I believe in economic thought through the centuries rather than the science, quote unquote, of economics. So it comes back to one thing. As we get rid of the science, as Llewellyn has written about so eloquently, which of course, it just hurts my heart to tell him how eloquent his writing is. You don't know, I have to go to a psychiatrist just to say, may I say that Llewellyn King writes eloquently, but he has it right. We have to have the correct minerals. Without the correct minerals, we are done. By the way, we're also done with the cyber kinds of stuff that we're doing. So cybersecurity is very, very interesting, and it will determine where we are. But in the long run, it will be the minerals of the earth. It will be boots on the ground. It will be those people who sacrifice to make countries available and to make business available. I see that my distinguished Northeasterner there, Llewellyn King of the White House Chronicles, is just itching to jump on and have a counterpart to my excellent analysis. And Llewellyn King, you just remember this. That is my opinion, which is always correct and unbiased.
Llewellyn, remember, we're going to talk about the flying economy. What say you? You're muted. You're muted. You're muted.
You're muted, Louis.
And all the time I meant to mute Johnny, but I heard him. The economy and human prosperity is dependent on a number of things. Raw materials, although that is overcomable, as the Japanese overcame it with a huge boom in the 70s and 80s and 90s, when they had very little in the way of raw materials, but they exploited raw materials from other people, applying essentially brain power to productivity. At the end of the Second World War, economists told the world that if you had raw materials, you had nothing to worry about. And in fact, value added is what makes the difference. But you also need markets, you need intellectual freedom as well as intellectual capacity, and you need ambition driven by the possibility of prosperity. There are a lot of things that go to making a happy, rich country. And mercifully, this country has known it for many years now. I fear it's endangered by bad politics, by doctrinaire views, but right at the moment, we're in good shape, deteriorating, I fear, quite fast. The future is very uncertain because we have huge technological upheaval coming along in the form of artificial intelligence, which is moving much faster than anybody anticipated and is now affecting almost everything. I'm glad that you're in India, Andres, because I was just doing a webinar with a gentleman who has a technology particularly directed at gasifying coal in India to provide not only electricity, but also raw chemicals, so they're less dependent on Chinese chemical manufacture. I've had a lifelong interest in India and things Indian, which is probably part of my British heritage. And I certainly grew up among Indians, and I knew about Bollywood before anybody had heard of Bollywood practically. I was 9 or 10 years old, and enjoy. I think India is going to be a great player in the world if they do not do foolish things like the tariffs that they have protected their industry with falsely ever since the end of the Second World War. But globally, it is a new day, new technology, new countries emerging, and some older ones, alas, including ourselves, perhaps not taking actions that are as wise as they might be. And
Yeah.
Jason, nice to see you on the broadcast. Please excuse my friend, Dr. John Sibley Butler. He's a wonderful person, but he seems to have something going with my wife, and I have to take up verbal antagonism against him.
All right. No, let me introduce Jason, guys. And for those listening and watching, we are delighted to have Jason, a friend, a Longhorn, an Austinite, director of the Unmanned Aircraft at Texas Department of Public Safety. He's going to be with us, and in his role as director of the Unmanned Aircraft division, Jason oversees one of the largest public safety unmanned aircraft systems and programs in the nation, with over 300 remote pilots and unmanned aircrafts. His primary responsibilities include the insurance and compliance with all FAA regulations and maintaining the highest standards of safety in the department's programs. And obviously, Texas DPS stands out as one of the most active UAS programs in the US, with something over 50,000 flights in 2023 and more than 12,000 flight hours by all those pilots. Jason, welcome to the program. You're muted, Jason. Say hello.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm glad to be here, sir.
Can you guys hear him?
No.
Okay, volume up.
You can't hear me?
No. You sound far away.
How does that, is that any better?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Excellent, Jason. Tell us about what you're doing at UAS for DPS, and tell us maybe a little bit about you, and we'll start there.
Yeah, absolutely. So my job within DPS is to manage our drone program. At this point, we are Texas DPS. We have the largest public safety drone program in the country, maybe the world at this point. So those numbers you threw out, they're a little bit older at this point. We are at well over 400 aircraft, about the same number of pilots, but we're consistently flying about 50,000 drone flights a year, just our department. And what's kind of interesting is between 2023 and 2024, our total amount of flights actually went down, but our total flight hours went up because now, the technology evolves and now they can fly, bigger, faster, longer. And so that's increasing those flight times, but reducing the overall flights. One of the kind of differentiators with DPS is what our mission set is. And because DPS is a true public safety agency, even though primarily DPS is the state police, from a UAS perspective, we're involved with everything that public safety does in the drone space, whether that be border security or wildfire support, normal firefighting, fire mapping, search and rescue missions, disaster response. We have even looked into some of the more advanced technologies like package delivery and agricultural drones, because those could provide an asset to the department for large scale type of operations. So when you think, sometimes you just see a lot of headlines and everybody in public safety is doing drone as a first responder stuff. That's not necessarily the case, right? Our mission set is extremely diverse. And then our fleet has to be extremely diverse to support all of those kind of missions. We'll have an officer that right now he could be flying a small indoor FPV drone in support of a barricaded subject. And then 2 hours from now, he's out working a fatal crash somewhere. And then later in the day, he's working on search and rescue. So we have to have a pretty big toolbox with a variety of tools for those officers and all of our security personnel to be able to use out there. We also are huge on collaboration. So we've worked with the FAA for about 7-8 years now on helping advance these regulations and showing them that this kind of stuff can be done very safely, and providing use cases and data back to the FAA saying, hey, this is how training can be built out so that public safety can do this safely to do more advanced operations. This is how different regulations can be changed or waived to allow these more advanced operations. So it's really exciting, right? We're still kind of at the precipice of all this technology. It's still very emerging, even though it started to mature. But I think we're going to see a lot of changes over the next couple of years.
Yeah, Jason, I have followed you guys, believe it or not, mainly because what I consider the predictive nature of your business. And my question relates to two things. I'm a Louisiana boy, and I always like to say we like to put up stop signs after the accident happens. And I think that's true of most of states, right? Given your drone activity and given your ability to look at the city and the state of Texas in different ways, what are the predictive models that you're developing to show that if we don't change this kind of configuration in the highway system, then the probability of deaths will increase? Are predicting where we might go in the future in terms of building not only highways and et cetera for the Department of Public Safety, but also in saying the following. We had a guest on this topic from Dallas, and he said this: once we have drones in the air, and once we have cars with no people in them, driverless cars, the number of accidents would drop 80%. Because the drones themselves were able to predict not only the patterns of where people are going, but predict the patterns of how we can build things so they could be much more safer. So what's the predictive nature of the data that you guys, Jason, are developing? And how do you relate to states around the world? Around America? Is it being standardized? It is very, very different. What is it about?
Yeah, there's a couple problems there. So we have a lot of data sources and we've been working on problems like this for some time. Um, For example, we use drones to map every fatal accident that happens in the state, both from a evidentiary standpoint, but using drones instead of your traditional total station reduces the amount of time that that accident is blocking traffic. And what that does is that reduces secondary collisions due to all of that backup, right? So that's a direct benefit we provide to the citizens of the state with this technology. However, we've got all the data from the drone, when it took off, when it landed, where it flew. They document when they went out to the scene, when that accident happened, all of those details. But then you have to have some type of system to correlate all of that and give you some type of data output that you can use. And that's where we find we're having a really hard time. And there's data sources that we are trying to bring in, things like traffic data from Google and traffic lights and other stuff from the Department of Transportation to be able to correlate all of this. But there's also the human factor, right? That is very labor intensive initially to put all of those tools together. So we continue to work and really focus on public-private partnerships where there's some type of data sharing model that's going on. And we find the right entity to actually use that data for good for the state and the nation. Another kind of thing that falls into the same category is what's called drone as a service. And this is one of the next models you're going to see come out for use by public safety and the entire drone industry as a collective. And this is where you have strategically placed drones. Let's say one area we're working on is the 130 corridor here in Austin. And we would have about every 2 miles, we would have drone in a box technology supported by intelligent infrastructure, detect and avoid systems, airspace awareness, all of this kind of technology. And then multiple entities would be able to log in and operate that drone either manually or completely autonomously. So let's say at one of the intersections, there's an accident. The police can log in, launch that drone, get eyes on, map that entire scene, and all of that data is pushed back up to the cloud. 2 hours later, there's a fire in the median. Austin Fire Department can log in, launch that drone, get eyes on, guide firefighters in to the right spot to put that out. There's a tornado that happens in the same area. USAA or one of the insurance companies can log in, launch that same aircraft. Now each one of those entities don't have to own that equipment. And all the maintenance, the support, the pre-flights, all that is done by the private sector. And the end user is just paying a service fee to leverage all of this. And then once you prove it out along the 130 corridor, then you can scale that across the nation to other places, right? That could be all around Austin, all around Dallas, all around the I-35. Then you can start using all of that technology in conjunction with all those autonomous vehicles where the drones are going up at a regular basis. They're getting eyes on, they're seeing traffic flow, they're seeing any problems, and all of that data is flowing back into a system back down to the autonomous cars, right? And so it's that
Jason,
data that's everybody.
Yeah, I'm loving it because what you're saying is, and I think this is one of the problems. Luella can remember data in and data out, and garbage in and garbage out.
Exactly.
So when I was coming out of a graduate school, we had big data was the census data, right? We were just collecting all these data. And I think one thing that enterprises need to have, and I think you're in a unique position to do that, is have a theory or an expectation of what you're looking at. That is certainly you can just run correlation relationships between all the variables. But if you can have a dependent variable that you can say, we think the likelihood, given a Texas football game, of a crime happening in this place is this, and then the drones go there based on that predictive model, rather than saying, look, we're just going to put them up all of a sudden. All right. So let me give an example from my military service. So we had Hueys, and every unit had a theory about where people were. So the first of the six, 196, always got hit. You know what I mean? Why the hell did they always get hit? The first of the fifth never got hit. And our officers there, the officers, had a theory about the movement and the expectations, which would allow them to predict. Now, it was kind of based on gut, but what I see happening here, and I think you have really, really talked about it, is that if you have a theory of South by Southwest, okay, so I know if I go to Franklinton, Louisiana, where I am from, I fly into New Orleans, it's going to be very, very different doing Mardi Gras than not Mardi Gras, right? And we have done that intuitively, we know that. But now you have a model mathematically where you can show what would actually happen and where the drones themselves can be deployed. And I am very interested in talking to you about this and the relationship with insurance companies. And so, because I was a consultant for a major insurance company, and I would talk to them in August. But the drone service to the state of Texas, because it goes beyond, what do they say in the movie? There's a something in the air. There's not a policeman in the air. There's a highway patrolman on the street. Now we got them flying in the air. You are collecting data that will allow us to predict the safety of everybody in America, and it will be very, very predictive. Now, do you think that when you do this, that the number of accidents will decrease? Now, you don't have to answer that now, because I see that again, Llewellyn King is chomping at the bit to comment on my greatness.
I find this very interesting, Jason. Please forgive Dr. Sibley Butler. He is delusional today. He'll be better next time if he takes his medicine. I find it very interesting. You talked about the drone airspace. What is that? What are the parameters of that? How high do drones operate? Is there any inhibition against them going higher? And at what point do they become a problem for aircraft and for the FAA's jurisdiction?
Yeah, so as long as you have the right technology, altitude is not necessarily a factor. A lot of the things that we do, especially along highways, is very low altitude. It could be accomplished at 200 feet and below. And this is where the regulatory environment has really changed, where the FAA, the old mindset is drones always have to get out of the way of helicopters and airplanes. You're starting to see this shift, especially with, a lot of the rumors about Part 108, that it's going to be 200 feet and below. Drones have the same right to the airspace that helicopters have. And if a helicopter's down at 200 feet, it's now their responsibility to see and avoid, right? Because the FAA is going to call that drone airspace. But if you have really high resolution, high zoom quality cameras, you don't need that altitude for these type of operations. Now, there's many other places across the state where you need altitude, right? Border operations, stuff along Big Bend where you've got a lot of variety of terrain. Those areas require you to be between 700 and 1,200 feet, which we have waivers to do all these kind of operations. But those are much larger aircraft with very high-end cameras, 200x zoom, can do really amazing kind of work. But all this also, you mentioned South by Southwest, the same kind of model can be applied to criminal activity. And for example, right now, a standard drone is a first responder program. The standard model is I wait for a 911 call to come in. Drone operator launches the drone, goes over there, gets eyes on, within 45 to 90 seconds. That is fantastic. That's phenomenal. That's a much improved response time. But what if those drones were already in the air. So instead of drone as a first responder, it's a drone as a routine patrol, and it's already out there. And if it's a police drone, it's running red and blue lights. So over the University of Texas campus, if you looked up and you saw police drones just randomly flying around, you are probably less likely to commit a crime because you know there's already eyes in the sky. But this has to be done extremely responsibly with engaging in the community and privacy groups to make sure all of this is very transparent. Nobody is going to feel like their privacy is being invaded with this technology, and an emphasis on this is a safety mechanism, not a surveillance mechanism.
Very interesting. What about drone density? What you talked about is largely institutional and primarily governmental use of drones. But of course, there are a great many private recreational drones flying around. Is there any danger of an excessive density, say over a beach, or for that matter, over an accident? People are very keen these days to get movies of almost anything which they feed onto the web or onto into a television station. Is there a drone density problem? And is that particularly so at any spectacle, like an accident or a very hot day on the beach when people want to see a lot of bathers?
Yeah, this is already a problem. So we have drone detection in all the major cities, Austin being one of them. And every 6 months, we detect about 60,000 drone flights that are not public safety drones. Okay, so that's a lot of drones in the airspace every single day. One of the busiest days that we had is, I think it was in January when it iced just a little bit. The amount of drones that were flying around the Capitol, there were 7 just around the Capitol at one time because everybody wanted to get pictures of a little bit of ice and snow right at the Capitol. So this is a major issue. It's an issue at UT football games. So DPS provides drone security for all the UT games. And you've got looky-loos that fly over. They, for the most part, they don't know any better, right? Those are the clueless folks that are out there. They just bought a drone at Best Buy. They're like, hey, I got a flying camera. So it's really incumbent that we educate the community instead of go through and try to enforce and fine and arrest people because, again, they don't know any better. Now, there are the careless and the criminal that are out there. Unfortunately, in today's environment, if a legitimate bad guy wants to use a drone for nefarious reasons, there's very little that we can do to stop them. You know, the prisons understand all this. You see it over transnational organizations using them along the border and across the entire nation. But the
Jason,
other thing,
what is your, sorry.
well, let me go back to the USAA model, right? And this is where it's all about knowing who is out there operating aircraft. And a couple of years ago, we had those tornadoes that came through in Austin. And all of public safety in Austin, we have a network where if we're going to launch a drone anywhere, we send an email and a text notification to our manned operators so that our helicopter crews know, hey, there's a drone operation going on over here. So one day after those tornadoes, I knew we had drone people out that were mapping all the damage. I get a text from one of our helicopter pilots, and it's a picture of one of our large VTOL fixed wing aircraft that's flying below their helicopter. And he's like, man, I thought you guys would tell us if you were in this area flying your drones. And I was like, man, I'm looking everything up. I'm looking at the live stream. It's not us. Then the Austin Fire Department calls and says, hey, you guys have your drone up over here by us, and you didn't tell us you were going to be up. I'm like, again, that's not us. But it was USAA because they were out there surveying damage. But now we have a relationship with that company. So we have a notification method when anybody's going to be flying so that we can deconflict that airspace. And what's going to enable this at scale is unmanned traffic management, UTM, that NASA, the FAA is working on. This is actively in work and in DFW at the Key site. We are active partners with NASA in this, where we push through an API all of our flights in real time. And then your drone delivery, and very soon your air taxi companies can then visualize that and move around where those public safety missions are taking place.
That's very interesting. As a last question in this bunch of questions, what other cities are right behind you? You said that you thought that Houston, Austin was probably the leader, maybe in the country and possibly in the world. Who do you see following you?
Well, there's a lot going on all over the country. There's a lot of amazing research going on in North Dakota at the test site up there. Texas A&M, the work that they are about to get into up in Fort Worth is phenomenal. Arlington Police Department has got a phenomenal public safety drone program. So not only are they involved in the key site because they have all those drone deliveries that are going on, but they also support the Cowboys and the Rangers, right? And the World Series parade, all of those things. So they have to really adapt their operations because these are mass gathering events where there's a lot of people. So there's a safety concern and they don't want to drop drones onto people. And you have helicopters coming in and out and all of these moving parts. So it's really, San Antonio, their police department has got a phenomenal drone as first responder program. So it's really happening everywhere, and it's all about collaboration. One of the groups that I work with is called Drone Responders, and we are the largest nonprofit that supports public safety. And it's a nationwide, even a global organization where we go out and we educate and we train and we advocate for public safety so that this can be done safely to protect all the citizens of all the communities.
Jason, let me chime in, guys. Jason, you and I had the opportunity in my role as a professor at Texas State, which I retired from Texas State in April. But we work in this project for TxDOT Aviation. Jason, one of the leading committee members, where we were trying to craft recommendations and suggestions for the governor and the state on advanced air mobility, basically bigger drones for people, moving people around. So, Jason, give us a glimpse of what's going to happen with the flying economy. Is it coming? When is it coming? There are all these companies building all these devices. What's your take on the coexistence of, UAS versus AAM and the future of that?
Yeah, I think it's all about managing that low altitude aviation airspace, and it goes back to the collaboration piece. All of the drone deliveries that are going on in the DFW area and in College Station with Amazon have really accelerated, especially this year. It is a proven model and it works at scale. Now you're seeing there was an announcement today that DoorDash is going to be offering, chicken nuggets and pizza and everything else that you can get delivered by drone right there in Fort Worth. My frustration is we don't have drone delivery in Austin yet. I have talked to Walmart numerous times. There's one right down the street. I'm like, hey, let's put this, I'll be your first test subject. But from a public safety perspective, there's two key points, right? First, we have to push all of our data into the UTM system so they can see us. And one of the pushbacks we get is, well, just because, the police have a drone in the air, that doesn't necessarily mean that we need to reroute all of our packages or our package delivery drones or our air taxis. And our counter is, if your Amazon or FedEx delivery guy is driving down the highway and he sees red and blue lights behind him because an officer or a firefighter is headed to a scene, he is legally required to pull over and let that public safety representative. The airspace needs to be prioritized as well.
Right.
Now, we don't want to stifle innovation, obviously, because these are our partners. And we have spent about 18 months developing these partnerships because it's also it's a relationship that we will need for disaster response. Imagine we had another Hurricane Harvey and the highways are now rivers and you can't move bottled water, medical supplies, the things that you need to the people on the other side. I pick up the phone and I call Amazon and Zipline and Wing and say, bring me all your delivery drones because we're going to move everything over to the people that need them in real time. And again, it comes down to the collaboration piece. It's hugs and high fives is what we like to say. And knowing those people and being able to pick up that phone and get them there when people need them.
Yeah.
Okay.
John?
Jason, talk to me about the interaction between the cameras on the ground and the drones in the air. I think that, for example, at UT, we would get an alert as to what was happening on campus. And of course, it was based on the cameras that we had, but it was not predictive. It was after the accident. So talk to me about the drones. I like drones. I live out in, out off of 360, and I can take a drone and look at all of the, the possibility that something is burning. If we have a fire here in Austin, it'll be just like California, with all of us living in the woods, basically. But talk to me about the interaction or the networking between cameras that are not flying at houses and banks and et cetera, and your system of drones. Is there, if something happens at a bank, can the camera interact with yours, with your vehicle and say, are we there yet?
Yeah, not currently. We don't have that kind of technology. We are looking at, especially for border operations or border security, being able to leverage the alerts from the cameras that are already stationed along the border and having strategically placed drones. So when that camera gets a hit, the drone would automatically the box would open, the drone would launch, it would go get eyes on. But you would still have somebody that would get an alert and they would be able to override. So human on the loop,
So
the problem is scale, and this technology is not inexpensive. So our border is over 12,000 miles long. How do you put enough drones in a box to secure the entire border? That's not really possible. And the cartels are smart. If they see a bunch of technology in one spot of the border and you're like, yep, I've got that secured, they're just going to move their operations to where you're not. And it's just going to be continuing to move equipment until you finally have enough money to secure all of it. By the time that happens, that technology is now out of date and you're having to recycle this. So that's a problem.
Jason, talk to me about the impact of AI on your system. How do you, I mean, will you have to babysit it more? Will it decrease the number of jobs that you have? Will you be faced with massive layoffs? Would it allow AI themselves to determine where the drones will go based on interactive systems? Just talk to me about what you think the impact of artificial intelligence would be on the movement of drones, how you do business. Would be much more rapid, would it be more efficient, and will there be layoffs? In other words, is there anything in your program that's being babysitted now where AI simply would just take over?
Absolutely. So DPS, we have an AI Center of Excellence. They monitor all of these things. In the short term, AI tools makes our job much more efficient. And we tell all of our pilots when they begin our training program, the first 5 minutes of flying a drone mission for public safety is fun and sexy. After that, it's work, right? Because it gets very boring very quick. Imagine you working a mass gathering event or a UT football game that goes on for hours. And you're sitting there with your controller looking at a screen. After about how long are you actually paying attention to everything that's going on? A human being is not going to sit there for hours on end and just look at a screen if there are no alerts, if nothing goes sideways, right? It's just the same thing over and over.
So you're
And
describing an airline pilot. You're describing an airline pilot, and that's why we have.
Your phone beeps, an email comes in, the wife or husband calls, and now you're distracted. Now you're not watching that screen. AI can then be your your method to alert you if something abnormal is going on. There's also phenomenal tools for search and rescue, where you go into the AI and you say, little Timmy is missing. He was last seen headed in this direction, wearing a red shirt, blue jeans, white tennis shoes. You launch the drone and it is now analyzing every single pixel in real time at the pixel level, which the human can't even see, right? And so it's going to alert you and help you save little Timmy a whole lot faster than a normal human brain could. The AI stuff is also going to allow us to leverage and get away from the one pilot, one drone model, where one pilot can now operate multiple drones and will get alerts that are going on if they need to focus on a certain area. This actually won't provide layoffs. This will help with the boots on the ground problem, because every drone pilot we have is somebody that's not a boot on the ground that can help manage that incident, right? We are short of officers. So if we can leverage AI to do a lot of those tools, it actually increases our level of protection.
Well, I'm gonna jump way ahead now. You don't have to answer this if you don't want to. Let us say that I am chief of the FBI, chief of FBI, and that everybody who has committed a criminal act will have to wear something that can be traceable. You know, just like right now, we can trace people who have heart problems and they put in a heart, whatever have you. And let us say that when you go to jail, you would have to have a plant, a disc planted in you, right? Whatever have you. Or if you have been a child abuser, right? One of the alerts that we get where so and so's child is being stolen, you know, and they're driving a 19, whatever have you. Do you think, in the name of protection and efficiency, it would come that we can have a plant in Llewellyn King if he has committed a crime, so that we would know where he is at all times?
Yeah, I have no expertise or background in that whatsoever.
Yes.
You
But
know,
I think so. Yeah, I think
I'm a
it's
manager
there.
for
You
the
know, right now
program.
you have to wear the bracelet. All right, you have to wear a bracelet, and when you have whatever crime, or if you're on probation, you have to wear a bracelet. So then we know where they are. I'm just saying, is it becoming much easier where we have an implant and we just know where people are. And I
Google's
think
already doing that, so I don't think we have.
no, I know it's just very interesting. Like I said, you didn't have to answer, but I think that it's coming in a number of ways. Remember that cell phones, what got cell phones going was that when the daughters went out by themselves, and parents all of a sudden can say, if you have trouble, call me. So my mother would say, okay, you guys go play over there by Lake Pontchartrain. I'll see you at 6 o'clock. My wife would say to my son, take your cell phone and call me every 30 minutes. I mean, it's the same. So cell phones were really a safety device when they were first developed. Can you imagine being a father and sending your daughter on a date and not knowing if your daughter is going to get in any trouble? So I think I view as someone who look at technology in society, that is the impact of technology in society, that anything that is more efficient, that we will be there, including, I mean, we know where airplanes are now, all of the time. And as intrusive as it might seem to the Constitution, Americans want to be safe, and intrusive as it might seem, the police want to know where criminals are. And by the way, it might be that when a woman meets a guy at a bar, then there's an app to show how much money he has in his bank account.
Johnny, I've never thought of it.
So it's all
Drones.
basic no matter what it is.
I'm gonna create a day drone service. Llewellyn, you're muted. Chime in.
Llewellyn is blocked. Llewellyn, you're blocked.
I'm sorry. Can I bring this somewhat down to earth? I'd like Jason to tell us how he got into drone management. What are the steps, and is it a career?
So my background is actually all aviation. My first, we'll call it adult job, was running cargo for Delta at DFW Airport in the mid-90s. Then I was in the military. I was in the Navy during Operation Desert Fox in the late 90s. I got out and I went into civilian aviation. And I did what's called aircraft completions. So if you don't know what that is, most people think when a company buys a helicopter, it just comes like whatever they want, right? But there's so many varieties of helicopters. So it comes green, and if it's going to be VIP or a tour helicopter or, you know, firefighting helicopter or something, there are companies that all they do is they turn it into what the end customer is. So I did that for about 15 years, and I moved back to Austin from the Metroplex, and I was managing one of the completion centers here in Austin. And we got the contract to upgrade all the helicopters for Texas DPS with new, really advanced camera systems. And then Texas DPS realized, you know what? We don't have anybody with any expertise to actually maintain this technology and keep it working. So they opened a position. I applied for that and I came on with the department. That was 2015-ish. Then in 2017, we got into the drone world. You know, I'm a nerd. I like emerging technology. So I started doing kind of both. I was maintaining all of our tactical avionics and electronics and starting to manage our drone program. Then when we really scaled and it started to expand, because we were adding about 100 pilots a year, we realized we were going to need somebody full-time just to put on all the training, manage certificates, all the things that go into having a large-scale program. And so I've been in this role for about 5 years now.
What does it take to be a drone pilot?
Well, you have to be a little bit crazy. No, it's, you know, flying a drone is super simple. My wife is not the most tech savvy person on the planet, but she went to Spain for a month last year. She's like, I think I should buy a drone and take it with me. And, you know, she was going to live on a boat, so she wanted to take pictures. In one weekend, she's flying that drone through the house, out of windows, around the neighborhood. It's very simple. That's not the part that you have to focus on. You have to have people that have skill sets to be able to manage that aircraft when things go sideways, right? That's the important part, is the safety aspect. You're down flying, you're at 400 feet, a Black Hawk comes in from out of nowhere at 200 feet. How are you going to manage that? So you have to have people that are fast thinkers, people that have really good hand-eye coordination. And we use a flight simulator to kind of evaluate people before they get hands-on to see if this is their kind of technology. And we actually build into our training program a bunch of technological milestones to evaluate them before they go hands-on, because it's not everybody's cup of tea. Not everybody that signs up to go through our training program actually makes it all the way through.
How long is your
You're not a
training
great
program?
officer, not a great American. That just means that this is not the right job for them, right?
But let me tell you
If
why
you don't
Lou
know how
Allen's.
to plug in your iPad or
Mhm.
connect to the Wi-Fi, flying a drone, which is a piece of aviation technology, is probably not the right job for you.
This
So
this is why
there are lots
Lou
of little
Allen's.
mechanisms you can do.
This is why Lou Allen's comment is so great. So I was part of a group. I've done a lot of stuff for DOD and still doing stuff for DOD now. And let me just ask you a question. And let us say that we are, and thank you for your service. And I had a president's appointment with W when that was going on. But look, let us say that we're flying off of aircraft carriers, and all the aircraft are drones now. Do the person sitting behind the computer get the same kind of recognition, Purple Star, award, medal, as the pilots who flew in World War II and in Vietnam and World War I as great pilots? Their lives are never in danger. Do we have to change our definition of medals in the service, or even with firefighters in the civilian life? I think that is a question that people are struggling with now. at DOD and will struggle with in the future. It is the same thing for me to save someone's life sitting behind a computer as it is to take my F-16, which is now a drone, not a drone, and to fly into enemy territory and do what's done. Put another way, once the human element is taken out, are the babysitters given the same kind of recognition and the same kind of medals that we've done historically?
Well, you take that to the next step, where you bring in the AI piece. What if the AI is making those decisions and does that life-saving, right? Do they
Right.
get any recognition? Valor that has to evolve just with the technology, because you want to put less humans at risk and
Right.
let the robots do the heavy lifting at this point. But there's humans are humans. They still want recognition. So how do you balance that? It's a hard question.
In academia, the question is, who wrote the book? Who wrote the essay? And how do we balance it? So theoretically, the question will be the most asked question in the next 10 years, because now we have to distinguish between what the people did and what AI did. And if the people, are we going to just, reward people who were, quote, smart enough to use the right AI? But what you do, you take away from that, the pilot who is flying the airplane, right, and making decisions right there, and not AI making decisions. It's just a tough decision for the future.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Llewellyn, any more questions from you?
Well, I have lots of questions, but maybe not for now. I'm very interested in this whole subject, and I salute you, Jason, and bringing technology to situations where largely you help people, and I think that's fabulous. What do you think is the single largest immediate achievement of drones in the human environment? Is it speed of medical response? Is it speed of bringing police to an accident? What do you think is your achievement? What do you think this wouldn't have happened? This good thing would not have come about without a drone.
Well, for our specific agency, the securing of the Texas-Mexico border is our biggest achievement. All of those videos that you've seen and everything that's gone on to secure the border, in large part is due to drones and protecting our officers and providing that overwatch capability to all of our officers in that crazy environment, right? A lot of times the things you see on the news are very filtered. And you don't see the reality of what's going on down there. You see large groups of people coming over, but you're not seeing the cartels and those transnational terrorist organizations that are there for nefarious reasons. And the drones have made a dramatic impact on that. Second would be hurricane response. We have a large fleet of multiple agencies that come together. We were out there for Hurricane Beryl last year, and we provided an extreme value for the state of Texas. Texas has more natural disasters than any other state. So every time there's a wildfire, all the flooding, hurricane response, drones are everywhere, and they are a true force multiplier because there are only so many helicopters and airplanes. Drones are very ubiquitous, and it's very easy to put hundreds up at a time and provide real life-saving value.
That's totally fabulous. Thank you so much for that and for your service.
Come closer.
I said that's totally fabulous, and thank you so much for that and for your service.
I appreciate it, sir.
Jason, always a pleasure to see you. We got 2 minutes left. Tell us what are you working on the next 6 months? Any projects, anything that you can share?
Yeah, we have our annual drone expo that is going on. We about 4 months ago started the second state chapter for drone responders. It's called TexGRU. You go to TexGRU, texgru.org. We have an annual drone expo in December where we bring 400 to 500 public safety personnel together, and we have a day of panels and presentations and 50 exhibitors and a lot of training that's very low cost that the public safety can afford. So really doing a lot of ramp up for that. Plus I do a lot of speaking opportunities. There's a lot of drone shows that go on, and there's a lot going on in this world right now through the President Trump's executive orders, and there's going to be a lot of changes to what happens in the counter UAS space for both drone detection and mitigation. So we're excited to see what the rest of the year has to bring.
Excellent. Well, thanks for being with us today. John, and any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think that predictive models are where it is. And I think the drone program is great. And it's a collection of the data for the future that's important. So that when you get drone data from all cities in America, you can create the models to predict how to keep us safer. And just stay safe yourself. And thank you for your service. And thank you for your continued service to the United States of America.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Llewellyn, final thoughts?
Great what I'm saying, but also it's fascinating to see technology. It's fascinating to see technology with new missions and how it is changing our society. We talk about smart cities. We've talked on this program frequently about smart city, but we haven't really integrated drones into smart cities in our conversation. And here is a smart city use, a new dimension to the smart city landscape. And I find it very exciting. And you speak of it very, very articulately. And I thank you.
Jason, congrats
Thank you,
again
Nick.
for everything you're doing. Johnny, take us away.
We counted our blessings on the 4th of July, wishing we were rockets going into the sky, talking about redemption and leaving things behind. As the sun sank west of the Mendocino County line. And I have these pictures and I have these photographs to remind me of a time. These pictures and these photographs let me know that I'm doing fine. I used to make you happy once upon a time, but the sun sank west of the Mendocino County line.
Woo!
Okay.
Thank you,
All
guys.
right, Jason. Take care. Bye-bye. Y'all have a great 4th of July. Okay. Bye-bye.